we got a sneak peek here of his car collection. As you mentioned, there's going to be 21 of them in total. We don't have all 20 of them here right now, but we're going to show you some of the special ones they have out here.
Fans who have followed Paul Walker's life closely were stunned when news emerged that his private garage, untouched for 12 years after his death, had finally been opened, raising questions no one expected. At first, it seemed like a simple unveiling, but behind the doors, extraordinary discoveries began to come to light. Long-hidden secrets slowly surfaced. Personal treasures and memories were suddenly revealed. So what had been preserved for over a decade? And what remarkable, unexpected things could be hidden inside a place so long locked away? Paul's hidden car collection. Paul Walker's true sanctuary was hidden in a plain, unremarkable building tucked away in Valencia, California. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. No neon lights, no shining signs, nothing to hint that inside lay treasures admired by car enthusiasts around the world. It could have been mistaken for any other industrial unit along the block, an anonymous warehouse blending into the background. But that was exactly how Paul wanted it. He didn't need attention or fanfare. This was his private escape, a place where he could vanish from the world and simply be a man who loved engines, speed, and the beauty of a well-built car. This unassuming building was the home of Always Evolving, the garage Paul had created with his close friend, Roger Rodas. To anyone outside the car world, it might have looked like a simple workshop, but to those who stepped inside, it was a cathedral of automotive passion. And when the massive metal doors finally rolled up after the tragic accident, the first thing that hit people was sheer awe. The space was enormous, and within it, a staggering collection of cars stretched endlessly into the shadows. This was no casual hobby. It was a lifetime of devotion. Rows upon rows of vehicles were arranged meticulously. Some sat quietly under soft cloth covers, shields against dust and time. Others rested in the open, gleaming under the dim lights, as if daring someone to jump in and drive. The garage didn't feel like a celebrity display meant to impress strangers. It felt more like a museum frozen in time, alive with the energy of someone who cared more about the machines than the attention they could bring. Tools were neatly arranged, lifts stood ready to hoist cars into the air, and workbenches were covered with parts, gadgets, and the evidence of countless hours of hands-on work. You could tell immediately this was a place where people actually worked, where passion and sweat mingled with oil and gasoline. Despite the fame of its owner, the garage felt humble, grounded. It wasn't flashy. There were no velvet ropes or signs shouting about wealth or celebrity. Every car, every tool, every inch of space reflected Paul's devotion to the craft. He hadn't built this collection to show the world. He had built it because he loved every engine, every curve of metal, every roar of a powerful machine. It was a private world, intensely personal, a kingdom where horsepower ruled and fame had no place. As visitors moved further inside, the collection revealed itself in full. Rare European supercars gleamed like jewels, each one a masterpiece of design and engineering. American muscle cars roared silently with their massive engines, iconic symbols of raw power and freedom. Japanese racing cars, sleek and almost impossible to find in the United States, glimmered like trophies of a global car culture. Mixed in were motorcycles, trucks, and unusual collector pieces, creating a perfect mosaic of automotive history. Every car told a story. Every engine carried the soul of someone who had cared deeply for the art of driving. It was a horde of machines gathered carefully, lovingly, over years by a man who simply loved them for what they were. But the sense of wonder didn't last. As the team began to take inventory, to check titles and confirm identities, a strange tension crept in. The numbers didn't add up. Some of the most famous coveted cars, the ones anyone in the car world would recognize instantly, were missing. The serene, almost sacred atmosphere of the garage shifted into unease. In the chaotic hours after the accident, someone had clearly been busy, moving and taking cars without permission. Suddenly, the quiet, private world Paul had built felt vulnerable. The doors, once a shield against prying eyes, had been breached, not by fans or journalists, but by someone with intent. The peaceful sanctuary of engines, metal, and memories was now the center of a mystery, a real-life puzzle that seemed to grow more alarming with every missing vehicle. What had been a tribute to speed and craftsmanship was now tinged with fear and suspicion. A heist had possibly happened right under the noses of the people who loved and protected this hidden treasure. Was Paul involved in a carefully planned car theft, or was it just a frame-up? Let's find out. Paul Walker, car heist. When the shocking news of Paul Walker's death broke on November 30th, 2013, the world seemed to freeze. Fans everywhere were stunned, hearts heavy with grief, tears streaming as candles flickered, and Hollywood dimmed its lights in mourning. The headlines screamed tragedy, and social media overflowed with tributes. Yet, far from the public's sorrow, an entirely different drama was quietly unfolding behind closed doors, inside Paul's secret warehouse, the hidden heart of his lifelong passion for cars. This warehouse, tucked away in an unassuming industrial area, was a private sanctuary where Paul's love for automobiles came alive. It was more than just a collection of rare and powerful machines. It was a place of peace where he could disappear from the world and immerse himself in the roar of engines and the gleam of polished chrome. But within a single day of his death, that sanctuary was violated. According to reports, a man named Richard Taylor, who had worked at the warehouse and helped care for the vehicles, saw an opportunity in the chaos. Rather than protecting Paul's cherished legacy, Taylor allegedly orchestrated a midnight operation to move cars out of the building. Under the cover of darkness, and while the world was still reeling from the news, he and a group of helpers reportedly whisked away over 30 vehicles from the collection. By the time the sun rose over Valencia, California, some of the rarest and most beloved cars Paul had ever owned had vanished. The list of missing vehicles was staggering. Among them were a 2011 Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a 2008 BMW M3, and a number of rare trucks and classic cars that represented decades of automotive history. For months, the Walker family was left in the dark, unaware of where the cars had gone. When they reached out, asking for their return, they were met with silence, delays, or evasive excuses. As the story unfolded, it became clear that Taylor was not only moving the cars, he was allegedly withholding the legal paperwork, the titles, and crucial documents that proved ownership. Essentially, he was holding the collection hostage. The Walker estate accused Taylor of trying to extort money, using Paul's most treasured machines as bargaining chips. The betrayal was bitter. For fans, Paul's cars were symbols of his life, his joy, and his generosity, a reflection of the man who had thrilled audiences on the big screen and shared his passion off it. To see them leveraged for profit while grief still hung heavy in the air felt like a cruel insult to everything Paul had stood for. The legal battle that followed was nothing short of epic. Paul's father and the estate launched a massive lawsuit to reclaim the vehicles, accusing Taylor of conversion, a legal term meaning he had taken someone else's property and treated it as his own. For a time, it seemed the worst-case scenario might come true. The cars could be sold to private collectors who cared little for their history, erasing a significant part of Paul's legacy. Yet the Walker family refused to give up. They meticulously tracked each vehicle, identifying every VIN number, every trailer where a car might have been hidden, leaving no stone unturned. Over the course of more than a year, they fought tirelessly in court, determined to bring the collection home. Finally, in 2016, their persistence paid off. A settlement was reached, and the court ordered the return of the cars to the Walker estate. The triumph was undeniable. The family had succeeded in reclaiming not only physical vehicles, but a piece of Paul's spirit and passion. Yet even with the collection back where it belonged, the ordeal left a bitter aftertaste. The violation of trust, the greed, and the audacity of trying to exploit Paul's legacy had left scars that no victory could fully erase. The sanctuary had been broken into by someone Paul had trusted. So why did Paul own so many of the exact same model? Are they for show-off? Let's take a closer look. Paul Walker's passion for cars. Paul Walker was one of the most recognized faces in the world of car movies. To the public, he seemed like a lucky actor who got paid to drive fast and look cool. Fans remembered him as Brian O'Connor, the guy behind the wheel of the blue Nissan Skyline and the silver Toyota Supra. On screen, it looked easy. He showed up, read his lines, and disappeared into the bright lights of Hollywood. But behind that image, Paul's story was far more fascinating. He wasn't just pretending to love cars, he was a real-life gearhead long before he ever stepped onto a movie set. Unlike many actors who rely on assistants and hired mechanics, Paul got his hands dirty. He knew cars down to the smallest bolt, could tune engines, and understood how every part worked. While most celebrities treated cars as props or status symbols, Paul treated them like living machines. He spent entire weekends in his garage, covered in oil and grease, just working on engines and perfecting setups. Cars weren't just a job for him, they were a lifelong passion. This love for speed mates naturally. Paul grew up in a family obsessed with racing. His grandfather had been a professional racer, driving factory cars for Ford, and the thrill of engines and competition ran in the family. As a boy, Paul would watch his father tinker with cars in the driveway, learning by observing every turn of the wrench and every adjustment to a carburetor. By the time he was a teenager, he was not just helping, he was actively learning to improve engines, searching for the right parts, and understanding how every small change affected performance. Cars were more than a hobby, they were part of his identity. When the first Fast and Furious film hit theaters in 2001, audiences went wild. The flashy neon lights, high-speed races, and daring stunts captured everyone's attention. But Paul saw more than just a movie set. He studied the cars the way a mechanic studies an engine. He helped select vehicles for the film, making sure they were realistic and true to the culture of street racing. He spent hours talking to stunt drivers and mechanics, asking detailed questions about turbo sizes, suspension setups, and performance tuning. When it came to driving, he didn't just sit behind the wheel. He performed many of his own stunts, demonstrating skill and control that matched or even exceeded professional drivers. While other stars were attending Hollywood parties or press events, Paul often chose to be at the track. He competed in real racing series like the Red Line Time Attack, driving a BMW M3 with precision and confidence. These weren't just for show. He genuinely tested himself against other professional racers and proved that his talent wasn't limited to the movies. His love for cars and racing wasn't performative. It was genuine, and it shaped every decision he made. Paul also wanted to create a space where his two worlds could meet. Using his fame, he opened a shop called Always Evolving, a place where car enthusiasts could explore new ideas, build unique vehicles, and experience the thrill of speed safely. Here, Paul could be himself, not the Hollywood actor, not the movie star, but a man who lived and breathed cars. He maintained two very different lives. In public, he was a global star, adored by millions. In private, he was a simple nothing more than the sound of an engine roaring to life. He carefully kept his massive car collection hidden, not to show off, but to protect a private world where he could pursue his passion freely. That private world remained a secret for years, quietly thriving alongside his Hollywood fame. But everything changed after the crash in 2013. Suddenly, the doors to his hidden garage and private life began to open, and the world saw a side of Paul Walker that went far beyond his on-screen persona. People realized that he wasn't just an actor pretending to love cars. He was a true car lover, a talented driver, and a man who lived his passion fully, even when no one was watching. Car collection strategy. When the team walked through Paul's warehouse, they stumbled upon something that didn't make sense at first. Most car collectors want a little bit of everything. They chase after a Ferrari, then a Porsche, then a Lamborghini, each one different from the last. But Paul didn't follow the usual rules. Instead, he had 5 identical white BMW M3s lined up in a row. Every single detail matched. The same year, the same color, even the same huge wing on the back. To an outsider, it might have seemed like he just forgot he already owned one. But to someone who truly knew cars, this was pure brilliance. These weren't just ordinary BMWs, they were M3 lightweight. Back in 1995, BMW had a special idea. They wanted to build a car just for racing, so they stripped out everything that added weight. No air conditioning, no radio, not even the insulation that keeps the cabin quiet. The doors were made of aluminum, and a special checkered flag decal marked the front and back. Only about 126 of these cars were ever made. People naturally wondered why he wanted so many of the exact same car. The answer was simple. Paul was thinking ahead, playing a very clever long game. He knew that as the years passed, these cars would become legendary. To him, they weren't just fun machines for the racetrack. They were smart investments. Friends close to him even said he saw them as a way to secure the future for his daughter, Meadow, almost like a personal retirement fund. What made his strategy so brilliant was how well he understood the car world. He saw that most cars were becoming heavier, more complicated, and full of gadgets and computers. He knew that someday people would crave the pure thrill of a simple, raw driving experience again. By collecting such a large portion of the world's supply of these rare lightweights, Paul was holding on to a piece of history, one that could only grow in value. He kept these cars in near-perfect condition. Some had barely any miles on the odometer, and when the day finally came for them to go to auction, the world saw just how right he had been. They sold for staggering prices, with some reaching over $300,000 each. Why was the government after him? Couldn't he afford the cars? Let's take a closer look. Paul Walker's Skyline Battle. While Paul Walker had a deep love for BMWs, his heart truly raced for one car that was, in the eyes of the American government, almost criminal. This car was the legendary Nissan Skyline R34 GTR. On the big screen, it was his signature ride, the one that made audiences cheer every time it roared across the pavement. But in real life, owning one was a legal nightmare. Strict import laws in the United States made it almost impossible to drive these high-performance Japanese machines on American roads. They were officially banned. But Paul was never the type to be stopped by rules. He didn't just want the car, he wanted it done right. To get these Skylines into the country, a company called Kaizo Industries discovered a clever loophole. Their method was sneaky but effective. They would buy the cars in Japan, remove the engines entirely, and then ship the vehicles to the United States as kit cars. Without engines, these cars weren't legally considered complete vehicles, which meant they could slip past customs and government regulations. Once they arrived in California, skilled mechanics would reinstall the powerful engines, and the cars would be registered under new names. Paul was deeply involved in this process. He worked closely with Kaizo to create a Bayside blue Skyline that matched his exact vision. He was very clear about what he wanted. Unlike many tuners who favored loud, sticker-covered bomber cars, Paul wanted something different. He wanted a clean, pure, and incredibly fast machine, a car that looked elegant but performed like a rocket. He oversaw the modifications personally, ensuring that every detail, from the engine tuning to the bodywork, reflected his taste. However, the government was not about to let this slip by unnoticed. Shortly after filming wrapped on the fourth Fast and Furious movie, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI began to investigate. They had discovered that Kaizo's method bypassed important safety and emissions laws, and they were determined to shut it down. A series of dramatic raids followed. Skylines were seized across the country, including Paul's personal favorite, the Bayside blue car he had helped design himself. That Skyline was impounded and sat in a government lot for years, tangled in legal battles that threatened to see it crushed into a cube of scrap metal. The tension was immense. Paul owned several other Skylines in his private collection, and each one was a potential target. He knew the authorities could come knocking at his warehouse at any time. His name was on the paperwork, linking him directly to the vehicles. The stakes were high. For Paul, it wasn't just about owning cars, it was about protecting a piece of Japanese engineering, a symbol of automotive culture that he loved deeply. The struggle over the blue Skyline dragged on for years, lasting until 2012, just 1 year before Paul's tragic death. In the end, the car was spared from destruction, but it couldn't remain in the United States. It was ordered to be exported, eventually finding a safe home in Germany, far from the reach of the American authorities. So what do you think about the shocking discovery in Paul Walker's garage after 12 years? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.